Hey, welcome back to the Guess Where I Am podcast. I caught Linda red-handed mid-eating our toilet paper to cuddle with baby orphan baboons and be their little mom for the day was so cute, and it was so much fun. And this was a big thing that Joe and I kind of left this program with a bit of a sour taste in our mouth about. Fully surrounded by animals at all times. And our shower, you had to light a fire to warm the water. Our ranger, for some reason, was loving scaring us.
My body is eco-friendly because I leave no waste.
My favorite being the baboon walk and feeding, but there were also food prep, carnivore feeding, carnivore cage cleaning, cheetah walk, cheetah experience, canine dog experience, rhino rangers, small animal feeding, project work, research, because you can't test in there. If you can't fit through it in here, you're not fitting through it in there.
You had to Bella Hadid.
Yes, you had a Bella Hadid skinny.
I feel like you kind of answered a lot of the questions that I have about, honestly, like the logistics and the scheduling and the planning of Africa and how you did it. Did you overall have like an amazing time?
Hey, welcome back to the Guess Where I Am podcast.
And who I'm with.
I'm Koke.
I'm Louise.
And we are with each other.
Yes, we are.
Back at it again. There I go. There I go again. Quoting damn Daniel Vine. Why?
But you're the only one who thinks, like, that doesn't come to my mind when you say that because it's been so long.
It has. It has.
Because you're not saying it with the same cadence.
In my mind, I am though. Back at it again.
Back at it again. What is it with the white vans?
Yeah.
I only miss the Ellen show for bringing the spotlight to things like that.
Yes.
Now our media is too saturated and we don't have one place for the extra special people.
Yeah. And I love seeing those comments on social media, like this would have gotten you on the Ellen show in 2012.
Exactly. Man.
I'm like, yeah,
what a time.
Anyway,
yes. Today we have basically the reverse of what I can assume is our previous episode. As long as we stick to our uploading schedule, this is going to be the reverse of last episode where I am interrogating you, Koke, about how to and everything you need to know about volunteering and backpacking Africa.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Nervous, but also excited because for this trip in particular, I did do a lot of research. So I already have all my notes pulled up, ready to go with all the facts for you.
You're prepared.
I'm prepared. I'm ready to reminisce as well.
Yes. Should we just get right into it?
Okay. This is where the nerves come.
Yes. I'm thinking we start pretty light and then we can get into the nitty-gritty deeper into the episode.
Okay, let's do it.
So let me make sure that I have my facts right. You went to Namibia and South Africa. Those are the two countries in Africa that you went to?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And you started volunteer work at a animal sanctuary and then a game reserve.
Yep.
And then after you did that, you went on a road trip.
I did.
Okay, cool.
So that's the basics of it.
Okay, perfect. So as long as I have my facts straight, that means my questions are not like totally wrong because that would be embarrassing.
Yeah.
And also it took me a really long time to figure out how to pronounce Namibia. I don't know why.
Yeah, it's an interesting. I remember when I was first talking to the booking agent who I booked this whole thing with, she was listing off all the cities and names and I was like, what?
Too fast.
Huh? Roll it back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll get into some crazy names that the way that they're spelled versus pronounced.
It's a whole new language.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So we'll start fun. Why did you want to do something like this? What made you say, I want to go and volunteer with animals in Africa? Because I think personally, it's really easy for a lot of people to want to just go to South Africa to do like safari trips and those road tours that I see and like
Yeah.
just see the animals in the wild. But you kind of took this extra step to actually get like hands-on experience. What was that thought pattern?
So it first started because of a TikTok. I saw somebody on a safari. So somebody not even volunteering, just somebody on a safari viewing, I want to say it was a video of like a lion. And I was like, whoa. I was like, yeah, I could do that. And then I just went on this deep dive rabbit hole and thought, wait, I can volunteer. Because then I saw a video of somebody holding a baby lion cub and feeding it. And I was like, oh my gosh, wait, no, I don't want to just like view them. I want to hold a baby lion. I want to be feeding, rehabilitating, like doing everything and anything I can hands on with animals. I've always loved animals, so it kind of just made sense to not just view them, but to help. And plus, safaris are so expensive. So I was being a little bit greedy, and I'm like, if I'm going to spend this much money, I want to get like a physical, hands on experience out of it, not just something I view with my eyes.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's hilarious though. I feel like that's the beauty like of the internet is the access and the ideas and inspiration that you can get from it. What made you change your mindset from wanting to do that to then actually doing that? Because I think that that's kind of the hardest the hardest thing to get through when you are planning a trip or like really wanting to backpack is like then actually making that physical switch in your mind to being like, this isn't something that I want to do, this is something I'm going to do.
Yes. So my grandma actually passed last year, in the beginning of last year. So the early end, or the words, the beginning of last year was really sad, like dull time. And that's around the same time that I saw the video of the woman on the safari. And like I said, I went on a deep dive and I just watched video after video after video of people volunteering with animals and doing all these cool things in Africa, that I was like, I'm not going to be sad anymore. Like, let me plan a trip. I'm always happy when I'm on a trip and I'm traveling and exploring, and even more happy when I'm working with animals. So let me just do it. So I remember sending Joe a bunch of videos and being like, I'm gonna go do this. And then at first he didn't think I was serious, because then I kept bringing it up. And I was like, I saw this video of somebody doing XYZ with, these animals in this country. And he's like, wait, you're serious about that? And I'm like, yeah, I'm dead serious about this. Like, I'm doing it. I'm like, whether you want to come or not, like, I'm going to Africa and volunteering with animals. And he's like, why don't we wait till next year when, we have more time to do it? Because at this point, like, planning a trip like that, it was April or May that I was really getting serious about it, to then do the trip in October. Like, that's a few months. It's enough time. Clearly we made it work, but it's not that much time. And Joe thought we needed more time to plan and really figure something like this out. But I don't know, like, something in me was just like, go. Like, it's now or never kind of a thing. Like, don't wait.
Two things. First is I loved you mentioning how like planning a trip always makes you super excited, and a great way to combat, feeling depressed is to look forward to something.
Yes.
And that just reminded me of our mental health episode. And when we talked about how like it's actually science where they did like studies, and when you book a trip, like it's a very real emotion, and a great way to cure just a little bit of sadness is having something to look forward to. So I really like that you mentioned that, because that kind of reminded me of that. And it's great to hear you can look at all these articles of people saying that this is what happened, and then when it really does happen, you're like, oh, right, okay, this is real. Other than that, the short timeline is super interesting, and I think that you and Joe, I like your two mindsets of you being like, let's do this right now, and him being like, we need more time to plan. And that kind of goes along with one of my life philosophies, where the timing is never going to work out and the timing won't ever present itself. You kind of just need to make that leap and do it right away.
I also did think about, as you were just talking, how even before I booked anything, at the cafe I was working at, I told all my regulars, all my coworkers, my bosses, like, hey, I'm going to Africa later in the year, just to let you know. Like, don't expect me to be here for the month of October and November. So telling people that I was doing something even before booking something, like, kept me on track to actually do it.
What made you keep, though, that motivation? Because going to Africa isn't an easy trip for people, like us in the Americas, where especially when you have, a job and bills to pay. And going to Africa isn't like going to Europe, where you can kind of like book a trip and book a plane ride and get there. There's like a lot more back end work, especially when you want to volunteer. So yeah, how did you not lose your motivation and like keep your drive?
Yeah, it honestly took us a long time to plan everything. Honestly, I first met with, I guess I can get into like how we planned this trip. Is after all these videos of people on safaris that I sent to Joe, we then would just Google search, like volunteering in Africa, just basic, like, let's just see what programs are out there. Let's see the budget, like how much are we gonna pay? How long can we afford to do this for? All of that. And we looked at so many different websites, and all of them were pretty expensive. And the deeper we got into the research, we realized most of that money wasn't actually going back to the animals. Because one of the first things we realized with doing this trip is we want to give back to the animals and the planet, like conservation, as much as we can within this. So once we saw that 90% of these programs, the companies were just keeping the money for themselves and it wasn't going back to the locals in Africa, we then got deterred a little bit. But then we found this one company, and she happened to be based in Seattle, which was where I was living at the time. We emailed her, signed up for the program. It's actually like so funny because she then just booked us, like reserved our spots for the random time slot that we put in her website. And she's like, I pre-booked you guys, like, here's your email. No communication other than that. And we're like, hey, actually, like, can we talk more? Like, that's a little crazy, you just pre-booking us with no other information. And yeah, I met up with her for coffee one day, and we, like, in person, and we talked for over an hour. She answered all my questions and more, and recommended the programs based off of what Joe and I wanted out of the experience and the time of year to go. Gave us a rough, like, estimate for how much it was going to cost, and then nothing for months because of Joe and I. We were like going back and forth of like, can we actually do this in this short time span and all of that? So I feel like I'm getting so lost in my words. Sorry.
It's okay. Take your time. I'm keeping up with you.
Okay, good. As long as I'm making sense. I'm trying to like say this in chronological order. It wasn't until August that we then actually put the deposit down to do this, which was kind of risky because we didn't know also how many spots there were in these programs, like if they would have filled up or not. So I don't recommend waiting that long or that short before you're planning on going to reserve your spot, but that's what we did. It worked out for us, clearly. But keeping the motivation, going back to like the original question of it all, it's a hard one because we still had to continue on with life and like still figure out other things, make sure we had enough money and keep working at whatever jobs we were doing, because we were long distance then during this planning point. But I think because we were long distance and because we knew it would be a month minimum of us together in person, that was something for us to look forward to. So I think we're in a little bit of a unique situation.
Yeah.
Now that I think about
that
it.
and the idea of working with amazing animals, I guess.
Yeah. Just watching those videos over and over again throughout the months, being like, oh yeah, reminding myself of like the ultimate thing.
You should have put up like a little picture of the lion, like that person holding a lion cub on your mirror, and like daily affirmations vibes.
Yeah.
Be like, I will make this work.
Mm-hmm. It will happen.
But so you breaking down what you just said about how you even booked these programs, finding this program just to get a little bit into the tech side of it, was this a simple Google search and like looking at different blog posts or watching different YouTube videos? Like what websites did you trust to give you accurate information?
Ooh. So yeah, we thought a lot of the websites were fake. We thought the one that we ended up booking was fake because it was so outdated. So because I met with her in person, then I was like, okay, you're legit. But even then, like, I wasn't sure we were actually going to be going to a program. Like, until we stepped foot in Namibia, in South Africa, and got picked up by the project manager, I was like, is somebody actually going to be here? Like, did we just give our money to somebody, like a random person that I met for an hour in Seattle? So it was tough.
It's
like
a lot
nothing.
Of trust.
Yeah, it took a lot of trust because I didn't see any videos on social media for the company I went with. I did see videos for other companies, but those were the companies that were taking so much of the money for themselves. So I go to my trusted source of TikTok and hearing other people and like the programs that they went with.
Okay, that's great. That's great. When you got there, did you hear about anybody getting scammed? Or was that not usual?
I didn't hear of anybody getting scammed. I mean, I potentially did. On my last day in Namibia, I remember checking out and hearing somebody talking to the coordinator saying like, look, here's my confirmation. Like, this is the program I booked with. Why do you not have any tents for me, like a room for me? So I don't know if hers ended up being a scam. I didn't find out too much more information about that situation. But at the same time, she was already at the camp. Like, she got picked up from the airport. So she was somehow connected. So I don't think it was a complete scam, but it could have been.
It's kind of, you just need to trust.
Yeah.
And figure it out when you get there.
Mm-hmm. Lots of trust for spending a lot of money.
That's very much a backpacking mentality, though, is you're going to these new places and you're kind of just hoping for the best. But one of the, most amazing things about backpacking and solo traveling is it teaches you how to act fast, how to think responsibly and take care of yourselves when you don't have anyone to rely on or anyone to fall back on. So, I mean, you can try to find the positive in like every negative situation. I'm just happy to hear that you didn't get scammed.
Yes. Very.
But it doesn't seem like it's an often thing if you didn't hear anyone that you met there kind of talking about that or someone they knew.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not that I could remember. It was never like a big thing, if it was a thing.
Okay, I have another question about the programs. So now let's kind of break down these programs that you went through. So you found like could you call it almost like an agency of sorts that basically puts you in these programs that you want to be a part of?
Yes.
And by programs, that translates to the sanctuary and the game reserve.
Exactly. Yeah, so she was an agency, which actually, funny story, can I mention really quick before you ask your question?
Of course.
Joe and I thought, so the woman who I met with in Seattle, she somehow worded everything to sound like it was her own company in South Africa and in Namibia. So I thought, literally until we got to the second program, that she was the owner of the programs, that she was the founder, that she started it all. So, so I didn't realize she was like just a booking agency. I literally thought like she created this company or like this program in South Africa and it was her building. So it was quite interesting when we found out she was just a booking agent.
She's just a travel agent. Well, that makes sense as to why she just went ahead and booked you, because she was like, I want my commission.
Yeah, it all made sense.
But it worked out. Yeah. Okay, so part of booking these programs, I'm assuming, was all transportation included in that?
Another thing we were a little bit confused on when we first put the deposit down. So the transportation from the airport, like a very specific small airport that they tell you to fly to then the project is covered. But going from project to project, especially because they're in different countries, was not covered. So we had to pay for the flight. The only type of transportation, that was covered was the airport to the project.
And were the flights and transportation as easy to book as like going online to one of these flight airlines, or did you have to find like smaller planes to take you to and from, or like were there commercial flights, or
It depended on which flight. So the ones in and out of Cape Town were bigger. So like I can say our flight route. I flew from San Francisco to London because then we spent 2 weeks in England visiting his family. We then flew from London to Cape Town, spent 2 nights in Cape Town. So then we flew from Cape Town to Windhoek. It wasn't small, that flight, but it wasn't huge. The flight from Cape Town to Windhoek, it was like a medium-sized flight.
You're not taking a propeller plane.
No. There was only one airline that we found going from Namibia to South Africa and vice versa. It probably had about like 30 to 50 passengers on it. It was also a really, really short flight. It was like 30 minutes to an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So it was relatively easy, but booking with a South African flight or airline was different. It was a different experience than what I'm used to, because like the confirmation emails really concerned me. I wasn't sure we actually booked the flights. Like, we didn't get really any information back from them.
Could you have taken like a taxi, or is it usual to take planes?
Okay. No, it was too big or too long to fly from Cape Town to Namibia to Windhoek. It was, I don't even know how long it would have taken to drive, but definitely not a taxi.
That wasn't realistic.
No.
Yeah.
We actually, that does remind me though, we potentially were going to rent a car to fly, because then going from Windhoek in Namibia to our second project in South Africa to Hoedspruit, that flight, we had to first fly to Johannesburg and then from that airport to the smaller airport. And we almost missed that second flight. So we almost drove at one point from Johannesburg to Hoedspruit. I think that would have only taken like 2 hours maybe, but we made the flight, so we didn't have to do that.
Well, is there anything from like the planning aspect that you want to talk to? Because now I'm kind of transitioning to like you're in Africa. And we'll get into budgeting I feel like at the very end.
For sure. I guess the only other thing with planning that I'll say is, like I said, I watched a bunch of videos on social media of people doing these trips. I also mentioned I didn't see any with the specific programs that I chose on social media. Also, that's another thing. You're not really supposed to post the specific name and location of where you're doing these things on social media because of poachers. So that's potentially why none of the videos I saw was like, oh, we're at this sanctuary, in this country, and there's this animal. So it kind of transitioned into not knowing what Joe and I would actually be doing day to day at the programs. So even though we did do a lot of research, we also went in pretty blind, which was an interesting thing.
I kind of like that because it seems like they are really valuing the ethical aspect of taking care of these animals by staying more private, which is, I guess, in this podcast, we won't be able to say the names, but maybe we can provide some of the website links or videos that you looked at in the description.
Yeah, for sure. Because I've made a list. I did a mini series on TikTok, which go watch that. but if you're watching this, you're going to hear way more information, but it's still fun. And I listed 5 or 6 of the companies that I would recommend doing projects like this with. And because when I was in Namibia and South Africa, I was asking other people who they booked with. So this list is from real trusted sources.
What was the company name that you went with?
I went with a company called Nkosini, and yeah, we can tag everything in the description of the bio. The name can also be on the screen, but also that some of my friends booked with a company called Totally Travel and The Great Project. Those were the other 2 really, really big, commonly used agencies.
And they're reliable, and it seems like you said they care about the ethics of the animals and less about profit.
I can't say the same about Totally Travel and The Great Project, but I can say that about Nkosini.
Okay, so now that we can conclude the planning section, are you happy to move on to boots on ground?
Yes.
What were some of your first impressions or like any cultural shock that you dealt with when you landed into Cape Town?
Oh, landing into Cape Town.
Because that's where you started, right?
Yeah, I don't think there was any huge, oh my gosh, shocking thing. Especially, we landed at night, so when we got there, it was really dark. We pull up to the hotel, and I remember before we left, Joe's dad being like, "Isn't Cape Town the city with the really big rock?" And we're like, "Huh?" And then when we open our window of our hotel the first day, we look outside and there it is, the giant rock, aka Table Mountain. We're like, "Oh, that's what he's on about." It's like a huge flat mountain, and we just had no idea. That was one thing, but that wasn't really like that big of a cultural shock. That was just a physical landmark, which happens to be one of the 7, not world wonders, but like nature wonders, I think it's called. Anyways, cool. Another thing we noticed was that transportation, like Uber prices, it was $2 to get from one point of Cape Town to the other. We're like, whoa. Say less.
Your money went a lot further.
Only in transportation, though. I don't really think it went much farther anywhere else.
But what about in like infrastructure and lifestyle? Was it all pretty normal? Like nothing seemed super crazy?
Yeah, Cape Town was, just like, I feel like every other major city I've been to, but it was different once we went to the smaller, more rural areas, like in Windhoek and Hoedspruit, is a bit more different, but then it got even more different once we got to the actual animal sanctuary and or the game reserve, because at the animal sanctuary, they basically created this whole community of locals working, living, and there's a school there even. So that was very different.
What were some of those like feelings that you had when you went to those places that were so different from your lifestyle here in America?
Did
you learn anything?
I learned so much. It's so fascinating. I find it so interesting learning and witnessing and seeing other styles of like how people live, other lifestyles, and how welcoming they were to share their culture with us. They were all so friendly, and there was this one moment that I don't think I talked about ever on the podcast yet, where every Friday, the school kids would put on this morning assembly performance where they're singing and dancing for all the volunteers. And I was sobbing like the entire time. It was so special seeing them perform like their local culture and their music, and just like I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it, watching their dances. And then at the end, they had a whole dance party and they were teaching us their local like dances, and it was just such an amazing experience to witness. It was so special.
So it felt like a really positive cultural exchange, not necessarily anything hostile.
No, for sure. Yeah, nothing hostile. It was very welcoming. Everybody was they were so excited to meet us and, for the exchange of culture to get to know us.
Yeah. Just because I feel like right now, especially with everything that's going on in American politics, a lot of people are worried about their safety when traveling out of the country.
Yes.
Did you ever feel like you had to lie about where you came from, or did everyone relatively feel welcoming and open, like those stereotypes didn't necessarily follow you?
Yeah, I don't think this, if anything, the stereotypes followed from volunteer to volunteer, not necessarily volunteer to locals. And especially once we were on the projects and in the game reserve and the sanctuary, we were safe and we felt completely open. We didn't lie or feel like we had to lie. We never felt unsafe.
So did you ever feel unsafe outside of these programs, like when you were on your road trip, or did you relatively have a good time all about?
Even then, yeah, we felt so safe. But leading up to the trip, I got so many warnings. I was honestly like so over it about people like, be careful, like they're targeting travelers in South Africa, like be careful, yada yada yada, like don't leave stuff in your car. But there was never a time where I was like anxious when I was there. I felt so safe.
Yeah, and me asking these questions is by no means me trying to make any assumptions. Yeah. It's just, as a woman traveling, like these are things that we have to worry about. And so it's good to hear, that you felt relatively welcomed and not worried about your physical safety. Did you ever worry about that when you were with some of these dangerous animals? Or like, were you ever put in a situation where something could be dangerous?
So, yes and no. Obviously, they're wild animals. They're not cats and dogs that you have in your house. You can't predict their behavior. You just have to put your 100% trust in the managers or in the volunteer coordinator, like whoever you're with that day. Because for the most part, you're never alone. With the ranger, with APU, which is the anti-poaching unit. So one night in Namibia, we slept in the bush, no fences, nothing between me and the lions, but a small thin tent. So there was some instances where I'm like, ooh, like this is very different. I'm literally 3 feet away from a lion right now. But the ranger or whoever, for the most part, leading up to this situation, would give us the rundown of like, if this happens, do this. If this happens, do that. For example, when we got out of the truck that we were in driving around the sanctuary, and we saw an elephant, the ranger told us elephants will sometimes bluff charge you. If they do this, clap your hands, shake your hands, be really loud, try to be as big and loud as possible, and it'll back off. Because 9 times out of 10, they won't actually charge you. They just want to act intimidating and kind of, mark their territory. Yeah. So my heart did stop at that moment when an elephant did bluff charge us. However, like the ranger said, he just turned around. But he also gave us what to do if they do charge us. Like, this is where you go, scope the land. Yeah. Hide behind this tree.
You're with professionals who are helping you the whole time.
For sure.
Did you ever wake up with one of these animals like in your tent or in your cabin? Sometimes I hear about that. People leave a window open and there's a monkey helping themselves.
Oh my gosh, I wish I woke up with a monkey in my tent. No, I didn't. The only animals or things that we had in our tents was a goat and a cat, like a house cat. The goat was so funny. It was named Linda. It was really, really fat because it ate all of the toilet paper. It would break down. It would push open doors. If doors weren't locked to the bathrooms, it would push it open with its horns and eat all the toilet paper. And
that's a My Strange Addiction there.
Yeah. And I have a video. I caught Linda red-handed mid-eating our toilet paper. And then with the cat, there was just like a farm cat that one day just followed us into the tent and took a nap with me on my bed.
You mentioned during your little safety talk about animals that you were camping and you were in cabins. Can you tell me a little bit about, those experiences?
The accommodation in the sanctuary was in a completely different reserve, gated off area than the big five, than the dangerous carnivore animals that you actually have to worry about. So in the animal sanctuary, I felt safe. Besides for snakes and bugs. Obviously, those are like the things you can't really block out of somewhere. However, yeah, one of the nights in the 2 weeks in the animal sanctuary, we spent on the other reserve in the tent. And that was a little nerve-wracking, especially because that night there was a thunderstorm. And our ranger, for some reason, was loving scaring us with facts about thunderstorms in Namibia. And he was talking about, so we were eating dinner in this little, like really small hut, not a full building, like it's pretty much just a fence with a roof. There are gaps on the floor, there are gaps on the top. And we're eating dinner, and he's telling us stories about getting electrocuted. And how if you're holding your phone while in Namibia, and there's lightning outside, you will get electrocuted because something like in the ground, it carries really easily. I still to this day don't know if he was serious or not, or if he just loved messing with us and telling us like ghost stories almost. But this was the most terrifying thunderstorm I have ever been in, because normally you're in your house, you're in your bed, you're warm, you're cozy, you're like fully protected from a thunderstorm. No, I was in a tent surrounded by lions and cheetahs and leopards and rhino and elephants. Like, it was terrifying. Every 2 seconds a lightning and thunder strike would happen, and Joe and I were just like cuddled up in these little cot beds with one blanket. I was freezing that night. Oh my gosh, it was that was the scariest part. Honestly, I was not having that. Then it was a bit different in South Africa. One of the weeks we spent in a literal building. We had our own private room with a bathroom and a shower. And then the second week we spent in a tent closer to the type of tent we were in Namibia. However, this one didn't have any fences either. So it was fully surrounded by animals at all times. And our shower, you had to light a fire to warm the water. So That was an experience.
Did they provide to you all of like the sleeping and camping stuff that you needed, or what did you have to bring?
Yeah, they provided everything in terms of sleeping arrangements. And yeah, we didn't have to bring any sleeping bags. Some people did bring them. They said they brought their own just for an extra little layer of warmth. But I saw it wasn't too cold, besides that one night in the tent of the thunderstorm. It was never too cold at night. However, I did see they had hot water bottles. They had multiple hot water bottles in all of the rooms or tents. So it was an option to, have some extra heat if you needed it.
What about the hygiene aspect of all of this? Of the camping supplies that they give you, of your access to bathrooms and showers? What did that look like?
It was an adjustment, and especially for me, if you watched my packing episode, you can see all the toiletries I brought. I love my routine. There were no mirrors. So that was an interesting one, washing my face, making sure I actually got all my makeup off. And yeah, like I said, you had to light a fire to have hot water. So in that aspect, I never felt fully clean unless, we lit the fire, which we didn't always do. But everything was clean.
You always had access to a bathroom and you always had access to a shower.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The bare necessities were always there.
Because I was just thinking about Fraser Island and how there's like 2 tours that you can book, and one has access to showers and the other one doesn't. Funny enough. So like you can either choose to shower within the shower, or you can use a hose type situation.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like that was the situation.
Yeah, I think maybe because they were like long-term situations and because they had people living there full time, they had those,
There was more infrastructure.
Yes.
Yeah. I was just thinking, if you're camping in the middle of nowhere, like, what's your bathroom routines like? But it seems like the campsites are still relatively established. It wasn't like you're building your own tent.
No, for sure. They did do, in the South African program, they did do campouts some nights. They didn't while we were there, but it's during those nights that you go to the bathroom in the bush and you make your own tent, or you just sleep in a sleeping bag on the floor.
One of the interesting things that you said that kind of triggered something in my mind is the fact that you didn't have a mirror a lot of the time. I remember when I was a junior in high school, I went on my first camp ever, a surf camp all the way in California, where we were just on a beach on a cliffside, camping in tents. There were no mirrors allowed. Not allowed. I mean, there were just like no mirrors in general. And there wasn't really any phone reception, so it wasn't like I was using my phone at that time. And I remember it ended up being a really healthy experience for me, disconnecting with my physical sense of self and my appearance. Not having access to a mirror every day allowed me to let go of how I looked and how I wanted to look, because it was something that was completely out of my control. And I really enjoyed that because I felt like I was able to end up being more present and like make mistakes easier, because I was surfing like I was gonna be a mess no matter what. That like I kind of just let go of that idea of looking good 24/7, which I think is really healthy for a young woman to go through, because so much of society places pressures on our appearance. Did you have any moments when you were in South Africa or Namibia working with these animals, when you're not necessarily, you're kind of disconnected to our version of society? Did you have any like I guess like moments of reflection that made you rethink some ways that you live outside of like cultural exchange?
Definitely.
Just like your own internalized beliefs. I don't know.
No, I get what you mean.
Does that make sense?
I definitely did. I definitely did have those moments. And I remember, every morning not putting on as much makeup as I normally would. Also because we were waking up at 5 in the morning and being on the road by 5:30, like it was a quick early start to the day. So I also just, I didn't have the opportunity to think about myself that much, especially because I was so excited every day, to look for animals. Nobody was looking at me. I wasn't looking at anybody. We were all looking at the animals. So it didn't really, like, I never felt self-conscious even wearing less makeup.
Yeah.
However, like, I still wear a lot of makeup to this day. Not like a lot, but I still do my makeup to this day. So it's not like it completely rid me of those thoughts, but it definitely gave me a nice reset.
Yeah. And the point is you were able to stay connected with the animals without having to worry about, looking great in every single photo opportunity and stuff like that, which is pretty nice.
Yeah.
I want to shift the conversation and get a little bit deeper into each program that you went into. So your first program was the sanctuary. Can you walk us through what your day-to-day was like there?
Ooh, okay. The day-to-day in this program, so they're very different, both the programs. In Namibia, Joe and I would wake up at 6. Breakfast was then at 7, and it was served as a buffet from 7 to 8. So realistically, Joe and I did not need to wake up at 6 that early. Nobody else really did. We just liked having that slow start to our morning and having breakfast right when it opened before it got too crazy and hectic. But then we had to meet at 8 o'clock. Strict time to meet. And then you would get into your groups. There were about 100 of us in this first program. Our groups, I think, had about 8 people in it. And we would do different activities. My favorite being the baboon walk and feeding, but there were also food prep, carnivore feeding, carnivore cage cleaning, cheetah walk, cheetah experience, canine dog experience, rhino rangers, which was the one where we spent the night in the other reserve, small animal feeding, project work, research. There was even some fun ones like a scavenger hunt, some enrichment, which was like painting little structures to go into the pens for the animals. and grass cutting, trench digging. Like, it really ranged in activities of what you could do. It lasted about, it depended on the program as well, because some of them were only like 2 hours, or sorry, it depended on the activity as well, because some of them were 2 hours long, but then some of them were 4 hours long. So it really depended on which activity you were assigned that morning. It was about a 3-week schedule to go through all of the different activities. And then it ended anywhere, like I said, it was 2 to 4 hours. So from 10 to 12 is when it ended, to then have lunch at 1 o'clock. So there was enough time, downtime in between when that morning activity ended and lunch, to do whatever you wanted. I always took a nap. Joe would like to read his book or go out on more walks around the camp and take more pictures. Lunch, again, was a buffet style, and that went on for an hour, and then we had to meet at 2:30 for afternoon activity, which this one was a little bit shorter than the morning activity, and it was the same activities but just shorter, and it ended anywhere from 4 to 5, to then have dinner at 6. This was only Monday through Friday, though, and Saturday it was a free day. You could do whatever you wanted to do. They still offered morning and afternoon activities if you wanted to still volunteer, which I always did a baboon walk. And then Sunday, the same thing, a free day. However, Sunday they offered day trips into the city, and you can go to their church as well, but they had a local service. To go into the city, though, you had to pay, and there were very limited spots. So it was a bit cheeky of them that, you know, you had to pay to leave, basically, and that there were only 10 spots out of the 100 people.
Ooh. They're saying you got to pay for gas.
Pretty much. I mean, it was about an hour drive back into the city, so I get it, but still, it just seemed so unnecessary to pay for. Especially because for the most part, you just get dropped off at a mall.
It's for re-upping on supplies, it seems like. It's not necessarily for exploring or going out or something.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I don't think a lot of people understood. So there were a lot of complaints in the group chat about that. But I was like, hey, I need more sunblock. Like, I'm so happy to go to a mall.
Yeah. So, it seems like at this sanctuary, you kind of got to build your schedule day to day or by a weekly basis on how you want to. Like, you had a lot of choice on if you wanted to do more physical labor versus more animals, or was it kind of like things were pre-chosen for you and your schedule was kind of built when you got there?
Yeah, things were pre-scheduled for us, and that did not sit well with a lot of people. A lot of people, if their morning activity was one of the more physical jobs, like trench digging or grass cutting, they would skip. And yeah, it was not fun for the other group members if some of their group members didn't show up, just because it meant more work for the rest of the group. And this was a big thing that Joe and I kind of left this program with a bit of a sour taste in our mouth about, because it also at the same time felt like there wasn't that much work that needed to be done. It felt like they were just doing things just to have us do things. But they were pretty good about it with, if the group members, if anybody didn't show up to their morning activity that was a physical activity, they would then get their spot taken away for the fun activities, like Rhino Rangers, which was the one where you go into the other reserve and sleep in the tent. So at least they had that bit figured out, where it was kind of like, okay, if you're not going to show up for this, you don't get the good stuff. But they weren't super on top of that. And there was room for flexibility, because Joe and I weren't there for 3 weeks, which is how long it would have taken to get through every single thing. We were able to ask the coordinators to switch activities some days. So some days we did things that our assigned group wasn't doing, and we joined a different group.
So it was a little bit flexible.
Yeah, a little bit.
Did you say everything you kind of wanted to say about the sanctuary? Because then I want to hear your, like, this versus that of the game reserve.
Yeah.
Can you break in what was that like?
Yeah, very, very different. So, like I said, there was about 100 volunteers in the Namibian program, but there was only 15 of us in the whole program in South Africa. So it was very, very different. And there wasn't as much staff. It wasn't as structured in the South African project. The schedule was also very, very different, and what they expected out of the volunteers
Yeah,
was very different.
before we get into the schedule and expectations, can you break it down for someone who might not be familiar with what a wild game reserve is, but what's the difference between a sanctuary and a game reserve?
Yes. So the sanctuary in Namibia had animals that were brought in that were injured, that were orphaned, that were once used as pets and taken in to bring back to normal wildlife life, where they would, feed the animals. It was more hands on with the animals, it was more daily physical human care
Was it
and interacting.
rehabilitation and release, or was it mainly these animals lived and stayed there?
If it was a mix of both, if they were able to release the animals at some point, that's what they would work towards. However, a lot of the animals, like meerkats, for example, really, really big in Namibia for locals to use them as pets or to keep them as pets. So once they were at one point a pet and then brought into the sanctuary, they then can't be brought back out into wildlife because they're too used to humans being their caretakers. So certain animals, yes, release, certain animals, no to release.
Okay. And then versus what a wild game reserve is?
Yes, then for the game reserve, no hands on. Viewing animals from afar, it's a very open, big, very big. Like I drove around this place for 2 weeks straight every day for at least 8 hours, and I barely saw 20% of the land. Massive area where all of the animals just roam free, eat, each other, circle of life kind of style.
Yeah.
And the only kind of human interaction that we would have with the animals would be if it's for the endangered species. So like rhinos. We saw a rhino one day limping. The next day, we then had a helicopter come out and dart it to then see why it was limping, and we removed a stick from its foot, and it had like a really swollen foot that was infected. So we helped treat that, and then we let it be after we treated that kind of a situation. So there was a little bit of hands-on work, but only with the endangered animals. They wouldn't help every animal that was like that.
Which one did you enjoy better?
That's a really, really tough question. Definitely, even though it's tough, like I know my answer, definitely the South African project I enjoyed better, the one that we viewed animals from afar, because it aligns with my morals more of like hands off, letting the animals do what they want. However, I'm such a sucker for baboons and monkeys. So like selfishly being able, yes, to cuddle with baby orphan baboons and be their little mom for the day was so cute, and it was so much fun. But I just think the program overall in South Africa was my favorite, and that's the one that I would go back to for sure.
Would you say that both were as ethical as you perceived them to be during the planning stage, or was some of the ethics kind of blurry when you got there?
Very, very blurry, especially the Namibian one. I don't want to out it too much, but basically I want to say it was Saturday night. Saturday, after dinner, the owner / founder of the company, of the project, would come out and have a Q&A. And we, throughout the week, would be able to write questions on a piece of paper and plop them in a jar. And he would answer them. My friends and I grilled the hell out of this guy, asking so many questions, because there were so many things towards the end of our trip were like, why is it done like this? Especially like the thing that I mentioned, sometimes it just felt like they were just having us do things just to do things. it didn't feel like they actually needed us to help. So the first program let us down quite a bit morally. The second one, not as much. However, I just think Joe and I have really, really high standards, especially as vegans and animal lovers, to find out that they sometimes cull, which is another word for kill off, some of the animals in the Project Game Reserve to level out the balance of everything was a bit like, like really? It didn't let us down as much as the Namibian one, basically.
Yeah. So I actually, before I want to get into the ethics of doing just like one of those safaris versus this volunteer work that you did, can you break down your schedule at a game reserve? Because that seems more parallel to doing a safari getaway.
Yes. Yeah.
I hope that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely think it would be more closely or more similar to what a safari would be like. And I know this because there were safari cars driving around the same reserve. In South Africa, we would wake up at 5, and then you have to be in the car, very strict, at 6:30. That's when you head out. It kind of depended on the ranger and the day's like mission or activity. However, it was pretty much 6:30, like no ifs, ands, or buts. You then drive around from then until 11 or 12, so pretty long morning. Again, you didn't have to wake up at 5. That was just Joe and I wanting to have a slow morning, but there was no breakfast buffet to go to. In this program, you were completely self-sufficient. They provided all the food at the beginning of the week, and you're in charge of your own meals. When it comes to lunch and dinner, as a group, you kind of rotate who cooks for the group. And there was like a menu book that you could pick something out of, and like this day, make this for the group, and this is how you make it for this many people. So then we had break from 12 until 3:30. And that's again when lunch would be prepared by 2 of the group members. And then you go back out at 3:34 until about 7, around sundown. And on these drives, typically we had like a mission, like I said, like something we're trying to achieve, whether that's tracking animals, fixing camera traps, clearing the trees out of the road that elephants push down, or identifying the genders of baby animals, which was so cute, trying to figure out the gender of baby lion cubs. That was a really fun day. Or even bushwalks, where they would drive us to a certain location and we walk for a few hours, which was really fun, but also really scary. Because again, we're surrounded by very big animals, the big 5, the dangerous animals. But it's okay. So anyways, that was kind of like the missions that they would set for the day and the goals that we would try to do. And then at night, same thing. Whoever cooked lunch, the 2 people of the day were the ones who cooked dinner. And we'd have dinner as a group, eat around the campfire, chat for a few hours, and then go to sleep. Do the next thing, go to sleep, and then same thing next day.
And so you liked that one better just because it seemed more ethical in the way that they were just letting animals be, and you kind of got to experience those animals just because you were within the same environment, not necessarily because you were taking care of them.
Yeah. Also, I think it had a lot to do with the rangers and the people leading and the workers of these projects. They provided a lot more information and seemed like they cared personally more about the animals and weren't just doing the job just because it was like the only job they can get and it was a paycheck.
Yeah. Is there anything more that you want to talk about in these specific programs?
I think I covered mostly everything about the project.
Because then I want to transition into your road trip.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that was like something that you did outside of a program, outside of a booking agent. Mm-hmm. You and Joe just put on your travel agent hats and pre-planned this, or did you just, is there like a common route that backpackers tend to take? How did you, let's start there.
Yeah. So originally, the first plan was that we were going to go to another country. We're like, we're in the area, let's go to Tanzania or let's go to Madagascar. But after looking at the flights, it's very expensive. So we're like, maybe we just stick in South Africa. And then it turned into Joe finding out about the garden route, which is a very popular backpacking, driving, trail, path, road, I don't know, way that people go along the south coast of South Africa, hitting a bunch of different towns along the way. And there's so many activities and amazing views along this drive. So it turned into him discovering that only because he found a vegan yoga retreat. And once we saw this vegan yoga retreat, we're like, that's it. We're going to go here. We at first were like, do we just spend the full week here? Like, what are we going to do? And then he found the garden route. And then that's when we looked into the garden route and all of the things you could do along it. So the garden route can go from one end to the other, either way. We started in Port Elizabeth, ending in Cape Town. So after our program ended in Hoedspruit in South Africa, we flew down to Port Elizabeth, aka Gekbera. And we only spent the night there because that was where the biggest airport we could fly, or the only airport I think that we could fly to on the garden route. And from there to the next town that we wanted to stay in, which is where the vegan retreat was, which is in Nisna, was a bunch of different things that we could do. It was about a 2-hour drive. It's like not a lot of driving along the entirety of this, even though it's pretty much the entire south coast of South Africa. It was pretty short drives every day. But on this first day, once we picked up the car, we stopped at a national park, which had the suspension bridge, which was this beautiful hike into this really, really cool suspension bridge across the water. Very, very touristy. Joe did not like it. I thought it was a really cool experience, but yeah, a very, very touristy thing to do. We then went over to Blue Crans Bridge. I'm definitely pronouncing that wrong, but I think it's the second tallest, longest, highest, whatever the right phrase would be, bungee jump in the world. And I didn't bungee jump, Joe did. I chose to just zip line under the bridge, but that's what our second stop was along this drive to Nisna. And that was a super, super cool and fun experience. And then we drove to Nisna and we stayed at the vegan retreat for 2 nights. We spent all day the next day at the vegan retreat, not doing anything. And then we had the most amazing catered dinner to us, just the 2 of us. There was nobody else at the vegan retreat. So it was so sweet. We got to know the family who owned this vegan retreat, and she cooked dinner for us. And we still dream about the food. It was so good. It was unreal. She was a chef in London for a little bit. Just such a fascinating woman to talk to and experience that. And it was so peaceful. Very, very needed after the 4 weeks of volunteering and like a pretty strict schedule, just being able to relax.
Yeah.
But then after that, we went to a town called Sedgefield, which typically isn't a stop on the garden route. However, 2 of the people, a couple that we met in South Africa in that program, they just bought a house in Sedgefield. So we're like, let's just go drive by their house. They were still at the program, mind you. They weren't at their house. But we're like, let's just go to their house. And we were also recommended a really yummy vegan pizza shop in this town. So we're like, double win. Then we went over to Wilderness, which is where the iconic map of Africa is. And the map of Africa is basically this lookout point where you're looking out over essentially the shape of Africa that was naturally built into the earth. And it's just a gorgeous lookout spot. It says map of Africa, and yeah, really nothing else in that town besides that, but we stayed in a really, really fun Airbnb camper van that was in the woods with an outdoor bathtub and shower. and it was a really like sustainable place. So they had an outdoor toilet, which you just had to scoop wood chips into after you were done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, we also had some really, really yummy vegan food in that town as well. Then we drove over to Mossel Bay, which is another stop along the garden route. However, Joe and I weren't totally impressed with Mossel Bay. I think it could be somewhere you just drive by. We didn't spend the night, we just ate and then kept going, but we didn't find anything to do necessarily. But after that, we then went to Oudtshoorn, which is where caving is, the Kango Caves. So we spent the night in Oudtshoorn, and then the next morning we went caving for, I think, 2 hours, which was my first proper caving experience. Joe's done it all throughout his life. Really, really cool. We fit in through some tiny spots in the caves in these rock formations, which was really, really cool. But it was kind of funny squeezing through and sliding on these rocks. Again, I could insert some videos here of us doing that.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
Only just because I already talked about this briefly, but the nutty putty problem, which do you know about that story? Where this guy was caving and he found himself stuck upside down and there was nothing they could do to get him out and he's still down there.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Like, I would never do the caving that you guys did. That is so scary.
The thing is, though, there was this little structure before you went in, after you're in the building where it starts, where you get your tickets. There's a little structure that they recommend you go through because it's the actual size of the smallest points that you're going to have to fit through. And it's like, test now, because you can't test in there. If you can't fit through in here, you're not fitting through it in there.
You had to Bella Hadid. Yes,
you had a Bella Hadid skinny, itty bitty speck of dust through this cave. And we're standing there.
My favorite saying that I came across is, my body is eco-friendly because I leave no waste. It's giving caving.
Yes, fully. But it was so funny because we're standing there. It was Joe and I and another couple, and then a mom and a daughter. Then at the last second, a family of 3 come running up, and we're like, we made it! Like, out of breath. Meanwhile, they recommend you to get there like 30 minutes beforehand. They get there at the last second. The dad, he's a big dude. Like, he's big boned. And I'm looking at him like, okay, I fit through those. And I'm not trying to like fat shame her. Like, I wasn't fat shaming, but like, he was tall and he got some weight on him. And I'm like, you
might have been a little body dysmorphia there for him.
I'm like,
maybe he needed to be humbled.
Yeah, I'm like, did you go through that test thing? I'm like, what? I'm like,
he sucks in. You gotta suck in.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think you're gonna fit, my guy.
Get a corset on him.
But we get to the point. He gets through the first one. And then the guide must have went up to him because he didn't go through the second and third, which were the really tiny spots. Because it wasn't just a tiny spot you just like, shimmy your way through. It's a tiny spot that you have to crawl your way up or like slide down. So it's like pretty physical as well. But he ended up not doing those 2. And the way that the caves worked is, you go one way, you have to come back the same way. So he just waited and didn't do 90% of the caving.
Yeah.
Which I was like really worried, genuinely. I was like, that's it. He's going to think he can get through and then we're all done for. Yeah. There's no other way out.
Oh, man.
But yeah, so that was really fun, the caving. We didn't do anything else in that town. We then drove to Cape Agulhas, which is the southernmost point of all of Africa. And it is also where 2 oceans meet. The Indian and the Atlantic Ocean come together right at this point. So we drove to there and it was really, really cool to see. But that was pretty much all there was in that town. Nothing really else that we did. We then went to one more stop before the end, which was called Hermanus. We had a lovely dinner. It was a really, really cute town on the water. Pretty much it, again, for that town. Once we got to the second half of this trip, everybody says the drives aren't as pretty. It's really like the first half, or I guess for some people, if you're going the opposite way that we did, the second half is the prettier drives because it's just highways at this point. And then after Hermanus, we went back to Cape Town, and this is where we ended the trip. But we did do a lot in Cape Town the second time around. We went up Table Mountain, we went down to Simon's Bay, which is the beach with all the penguins, which was really, really cool to see. And we had some unreal vegan food. Like, South Africa really surprised me with how vegan friendly they are. There was this one cafe that was a chain, almost like a Starbucks, where they're just everywhere in Namibia as well. And it was so good.
So, how many days was your road trip in total?
It was a week. It was 7 nights, 8 days.
Would you say that was pretty normal, or do you wish you had more time?
I think that's the average length of time. Some people might have spent a little bit more, maybe like a week and a half, but I don't think more than a week and a half. Because like I said, they were short drives.
Yeah. Were you mostly sleeping in the van that you had rented, or were you mostly sleeping in hostels or hotels or Airbnbs?
Yeah, we didn't rent a van that you could sleep in. We just rented a car, like a typical car. We booked really, really fun, unique kind of Airbnb stays in every town.
Cool. And I'm assuming you booked all of this ahead of time?
No. No, we actually didn't. Some of it we did. We booked the caving ahead of time and the vegan retreat. Yeah, I think we only booked the places we were staying while we were in South Africa in doing the project Game Reserve. Like then, like 2 weeks before we were doing it.
And would you say that's pretty normal, or do you wish you would have booked those things ahead of time? Like, you didn't have any issues with finding availability?
Yeah,
to
no
places?
issues. We did not need to book it in general. Like, it was one of those things. It might have just been the time of year that we were doing, granted. I think it was towards the end of their busy season or at the beginning of their busy season. I can't remember which. So it was on the slower end of things in South Africa.
Because I know in Australia, there are some popular spots where it's like, if you're not doing this months ahead of time, or even in Europe, like if you're not booking like your ticket to see certain museums, like the Van Gogh Museum in Netherlands, like you're not going to get that day of.
Yeah.
But that didn't seem like the issue here.
Yeah, none of the things we did were that crazy touristy that you had to buy a ticket well in advance.
Yeah. So then that was kind of my follow-up question, was how touristy did it feel this road trip? Or did it kind of feel like you had the road to yourself the whole time?
The only time it felt super touristy was the first day, the day we went to the suspension bridge at the national park. The rest of it kind of felt like we weren't the only people on the road. I mean, we were in some parts of it, especially because it was pretty rural areas. There were some towns that we went to that were locals. Like, it wasn't touristy.
Yeah, I was going to ask, it's like how much of your trip ended up being less touristy because you were going to less popular destinations? Like, if you would, because you said the garden route is pretty popular, but if you went off the beaten path.
It is really popular. We met probably only like 3 other couples actually doing it at the time. I think it's popular, but it's not like Australia East Coast popular.
Yeah, okay. Was it mostly people traveling with a partner or a friend, or were there solo backpackers throughout, like, not just the road trip, but also, you know, this game reserve and sanctuary that you went to?
I would say it was about 50-50.
Okay.
I think we met equally, couples versus solo travelers. In the Namibian project, definitely more solo travelers, but with some couples, they were probably out of the 100, 6 or 7 couples of us.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like you kind of answered a lot of the questions that I have about honestly like the logistics and the scheduling and the planning of Africa and how you did it. Did you overall have like an amazing time?
Such an amazing, incredible experience. I still, to this day, will look back at my camera roll and I surprise myself. I'm like, oh my gosh, I did do that. Like, that was me. I was used to falling asleep to the sounds of lions snoring. Like, that's a crazy thing to say. But coming back
Yeah.
and not having that white noise was wild.
Mm.
So,
Things were
yeah,
too quiet.
too quiet. Yeah. It was so lovely waking up to the sounds of birds, like so many types of birds and their different songs in the morning was just the best alarm to wake up to. Like it made waking up at 5 a.m. so enjoyable.
So it was a really life-changing experience that you would recommend most people to do if they could find the funds and the time.
1000%. So,
Yeah.
so incredible. Yeah.
So we've concluded talking about your experiences, both logistically, planning, scheduling, and everything about how to volunteer in Africa with wildlife, how to do a road trip, and common practices, some experiences you went through, some, emotional, mental changes, physical changes. Now I want to get into potentially the scariest part of all of this, scarier than lions and hyenas, but money. The scariest of
Yes.
all is the money spent. I'm a big fan of saying that money comes and goes, experiences and memories are forever, so things are worth spending a
Exactly.
lot on. This seems like a trip based off of, how much it's changed you and how much of a positive impact it's had on you. It seems like it's worth the money, but the people we need to know, how much did this cost and what was your budgeting
So,
like?
because I was so determined to do this, I was kind of ready to just drop however much. Within reason, okay?
Yeah. Can I quickly interject and say I feel like this is common for us? I feel like at the end of the day, we're just like, yeah, we budget, but then sometimes our budget goes out the window because we just want to do all of these things, and why
And like
not?
you said, I knew going into it, it was going to be such a life-changing experience that the money was going to be worth it. Like it was one of those once in a lifetime things that I'm like, let me do this while I can. Tomorrow is not promised. This is a dream trip of mine. So the cost of the actual program itself for 4 weeks, including both the two different programs in the two different countries, which included food, accommodation, and transportation from the airport, was $2,890.
Which I don't think that's that bad for 4 weeks with everything that you did and experienced and saw. That
Yes,
feels
exactly.
good.
Because then I took that number and I divided it by 4. And I'm like, how much am I spending weekly? Because I'm thinking about, okay, how much do I spend on my normal life on rent and food and all of these things and working? I spend that much a month anyways. But a week, it came to be
Yeah,
$722. And I'm like, it's kind of great. Yeah.
that's not
It's
bad.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was the project cost. For flights, which definitely could have been cheaper, I just did a crazy route, going to England before this trip. So all of the flights then came to be $2,025. So that's US to London, London to Cape Town to Namibia, Namibia to Johannesburg, and then Johannesburg back down to Cape Town, and then Cape Town to London, and London to San Francisco. So, the whole round trip, $2,025. All of that combined, the project and the flight, that's $4,915.
And that was for like a whole month of
And
backpacking.
volunteering in Africa with animals, plus a road trip at the end.
Yeah. It doesn't seem too bad.
Yeah.
Easy money spent. Did you end up, this is kind of just something that crossed my mind as you were talking like about money, but did you ever run into any health issues or anyone else who had health issues that someone might need to worry about?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Wait, actually, yes. I just completely forgot about this.
Because that's like a cost, always get travel health insurance in case you need a hospital trip. but what does someone might need to worry about their physical health other than maybe getting eaten by a lion?
2 of the common things that people do to prepare for the trip, besides just travel insurance, is malaria pills and getting your tetanus shots updated for rabies and all that. Because malaria, even though where we were specifically were all the safe zones, the green zones as they call it, you never know. I'm like, how can you track where mosquitoes are?
Yeah.
I don't know. So I didn't trust it. I got the malaria pills anyways. However, the only time I heard or saw, oh wait, actually no, I'm completely forgetting. I had something. I had a stomach bug at one point. And there was one day in South Africa where I didn't go on the afternoon drive because I just felt so sick and I needed to sleep. As a bug went around in Namibia. I got it in Namibia, and then it was like right as we got to South Africa, so I missed one afternoon. However, in Namibia, it was so hot, somebody got heat stroke and had to get taken to the hospital because they were so dehydrated. And it was too hot outside, and he just wasn't taking care of himself enough that he, passed out, I think. So that's the only thing. Just making sure you're staying hydrated. It was pretty brutal out there during some of the days. And some of the activities, actually, you weren't allowed to wear hats. Like the baboon walk, because they could pull it and choke you if it's one of the hats with strings. Or you can't wear sunglasses when you're interacting with the cheetahs, because if they see the reflection of themselves, they might attack you.
Whoa.
So it's,
Wow.
Same with cameras. You can't bring cameras into some of the activities because of that reflection aspect.
Wow. That makes sense. I never thought about that, but
it
makes sense.
Yeah, kind of sad, especially, my blue eyes, not being able to wear my sunglasses, but also not being able to take pictures on the good cameras that close.
Take memory pictures, mind photos. Yeah. Journal. Let's journal about it.
Yeah.
I think that you kind of talked about everything I had questions about. Is there anything I might have missed or any final advice that you would like to give?
I think I agree. I think we went over all the good bits.
Yeah.
Even some of the bad bits and my moral standpoint on some of the things. So I think we covered everything. My only piece of advice, I kind of said it throughout it, is how much of a life-changing experience this was and how I truly think it is worth it to volunteer and to do that type of travel. I don't think I'll be able to travel any other type of way now. Volunteering and traveling and getting that enriched in local culture was so amazing and so unique. I recommend it to everybody and anybody if you can make it work. And I feel like that's a huge part of this podcast, is trying to find ways to make this work for everybody else.
This was great. Thank you for letting me interrogate you. Of course. I would like to direct as host. I feel like it's as host for today, because you're interviewee. I think it's only right for me to direct people. If you are wondering, and you might have noticed this, but I didn't ask anything about how you packed or what type of backpack you wore. That is because we have a whole episode dedicated to what you brought and how you traveled physically with the backpack from place to place, and the things that you loved bringing and the things that you wish you had brought versus the things you really didn't need for a trip like this. So if you're wondering about, let's say our listeners or viewers, you've managed to book all of this and listen to Koke's amazing advice, and now you're like, what do I need to bring? Head over to that episode.
Gaslighting myself while underpacking for a month in Africa.
Yes, gaslighting myself, because there was a little bit of that for packing in Africa. And then if you want more details, like a breakdown of the programs that Koke worked with, more details about her scheduling, her interactions with animals, and even a better breakdown of her budget, head over to our TikTok or Instagram at
Guess We're a Podcast,
where Koke has a mini series. I think there's 4 parts or 3 parts out right now.
4 parts.
The full series is out. Feel free to reach out to Koke with any more questions as well. I did not experience this, so I will not be able to help, but I can help direct you to the right person, which happens to be my fellow screen co-host. I think that's it for today. I'm feeling good with closing out. How are you feeling?
Heck yeah. Love Africa. I loved that trip.
Okay, so thank you guys for listening. We'll be back in another week with another episode. And yeah. Bye.
We'll see you so soon.
There you go. Yeah.
We'll see you so soon. Thank you for watching or listening. Wherever we're there. I guess we're a podcast. Thank you again to Louise for asking me all these questions.
That was easy.
I had fun.
It was fun. Yeah.
Reminiscing.
Yes.
And chatting.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. This is your ultimate guide for volunteering in Africa with wildlife. Hope you enjoyed.
Hope you enjoyed. Bye.
Bye.